I'm a Jewess from North Carolina, so I'm especially proud of my tribe that we are hosting this event at the National Council for Jewish Women, so that makes me very proud. Woo! Woo! Yeah, feeling it. So I'm going to tell my story first, and then it kind of explains the impetus for the Unplanned Story Party, which this is a bit of a coming out party for the Unplanned Story Party, so we're so excited to be here. So I am standing in my friend's flat in her loo. Obviously I'm in London, and I'm holding a plastic stick, and I'm looking at it. And I've just been to the chemist, because that's what they call CVS in the UK. It's like everything's got to be like apothecary bottles and stuff. You know, it's Harry Potter over there. And I've gone to the chemist, and I've spent all my money because I have to use pounds to buy a pregnancy test. And so I'm bankrupt, and I go back to my friend's house, and I pee on this stick, and I look at the little pink line that is announcing in the Queen's English, "Oh, cheerio, you all preggers." So this news is a big surprise to me. I had gone to the chemist at the request of my boyfriend of 2 months, who I met on Tinder. Any of you ladies on Tinder? Gentlemen, Tinder? Yeah. Yeah, on Tinder. So really, this was a very new relationship. He was back in the States. He's a paramedic. He was like, "Oh, you know, it seems like you haven't had your period in a while." And I was like, okay, this is a man who's involved in medical things, and he's paying attention. And I just thought maybe it was the travel and the stress. I'm on a big work trip. So I go and pay all the monies to get this pregnancy test, and then find out that I'm pregnant. So, wow, I am on one of the most important business trips of my life. I'm in London on my way to the Cannes Film Festival to do interviews with hopefully fabulous, famous people, and I am completely bowled over by this thing that has just happened. So now I'm kind of spiraling. I have a transatlantic conversation with a Tinder boyfriend of 2 months to talk about this, and you know, we're like, what do we want to do? And he's really great and supportive, and you know, at the time I had sort of a condiment-based fridge, and just a pile of boxes with like a unicorn piñata on them in my room. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm really ready to be a mom just yet. I have been living here for a year, and it literally looks like, I don't know, like a troll lives in this house and not a person. So I knew that it wasn't the right time. And as much as I was hopeful that Tinder boyfriend would work out, yes, he didn't. He was really good during the process of this whole abortion, but you know, whatever. Yes, worked out with him. But I was hopeful. I just knew that it was not the right time for me. So we both decided that we were going to terminate the pregnancy, but I still had this business trip to go on. So I show up in Cannes, and you know, and that's how I end up, you know, on my work phone in France, Googling abortion, because as it turns out, I felt like I was this, you know, progressive, educated woman who knew a lot about her reproductive health, but I really knew zero about what it actually meant to get an abortion. I had used the word a bazillion times, I had championed the cause, but when it actually got down to brass tacks, I didn't know what happened next at all. So I'm Googling abortion. This is ridiculous. And I'm, you know, trying to find sources of information, and I have no like first-hand accounts of this. You know, no one in my life has ever talked to me about it. When I get back, and I'm also nervous because I'm in France, where like the wine flows like water, and I'm like, I don't want my work compatriots to be like, what's going on with Becca? She's not drinking at all. But I knew I was gonna have an abortion, but then like, what if something happens, and then I like can't have the abortion, and I have a rosé baby, which is maybe fancier than like a crack baby, but it's still like messed up. And like, you know, these are the thoughts that are like running through my head, and my producer is like, what's going on with Becca? And I'm just like, you know, thinking about the rosé baby. So when I get back home, I make an appointment with Planned Parenthood, and I remember Tinder boyfriend was sitting next to me, and we had gone through a lot, probably for a 2-month relationship already. We talked about my uterus like way more than I had expected he and I would talk about. And I'm on the phone with Planned Parenthood, and I'm talking, and they're asking me, you know, a bunch of questions like, you know, when was your last period, and you know, what, like, how old are you, and all that kind of stuff. And then they ask how much I weigh. And I love that in this whole process, I felt pretty comfortable with Tinder boyfriend, but the minute they asked me about my weight, I'm like, oh. Like, I'm like mumbling into the phone. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, just don't listen. You don't need to know this information. But it's just, you know, it's like that strange juxtaposition of like sharing this experience with this man who's very new in my life. So I made an appointment and Tinder boyfriend and I drove down to Planned Parenthood in Torrance. And I remember the day arriving, and I was like, what do you wear to your abortion? That article is not in Cosmo. People are not talking about this. Tinder boyfriend was not helpful on this. So I just basically dressed really infantile, just so everyone would be like, that woman does not need to have a kid. I was like, yes, I'm not ready. I think I wore like purple tights. And when I get to Planned Parenthood, it's, I don't know what I expect. I think I expected, and again, because of media and what like old white men in Congress had told me, I expected there to be like protesters and this like really fraught scene, and it was going to be really traumatic. But really, it was a nondescript building, and I walked in, and the women there were unbelievably helpful and kind, and I sat down in my chair, and I was like, okay. And then I walked into a room, and someone started interviewing me about, again, asking a lot of questions, about my experience, my sexual experience, and my reproductive health, and I think they could tell I was trying to be like funny in like an awkward white girl way, and finally they were just like, are you super nervous? And I was like, yes. And this woman just looked at me and she was like, 1 in 3 women do this. Like, you are gonna be okay. Like, nobody, like, that just for a matter of fact woman to just sit me down and just say, like, this is a thing that happens a lot. It was like this burden lifted. And I was so grateful for that, just that quick moment, between myself and this other woman. And then I went to another waiting room, and it was kind of like the red tent meets Orange is the New Black. It was like super diverse, and we were all there, like, it was very communal and comforting just to know that we all had our different reasons, but we were sharing in this experience. One woman was, she was an older woman in her marriage, and she was like, you know what, I already have a dumbass teenage son, I'm not doing this again. And I was like, fair point. There was another woman who had heard her husband had been fighting, and she just wasn't sure that this was the right time for her to have a child, and she was considering having her tubes tied, and she was sort of talking to the other mother about this. I was like, this is my first time, and then this kind of giggly 19-year-old girl next to me was like, oh, I'm a virgin too, and she was like, well, no, like virgin, and we were like, yeah, we get it. So I really enjoyed this experience of like being with these women in this room, and again, everything I had ever heard in the media told me I was not supposed to enjoy this experience. I was not supposed to feel some sort of community around it, but that's what was happening to me. I felt like I was really ultimately sharing this with women who were strangers, and prior to this, like I said, I had not shared anything other than with Tinder boyfriend. So I go into my room, and I get an IV, and I'm on my table, and I wake up obviously very groggy, and we're all kind of separated by these curtains, and I hear crying. So I lift up the curtain next to me, and it's the 19-year-old girl. And she's crying, and she's like, why am I crying? And I'm like, you're crying because you want to, but you're not alone, and you can, however you want to be, you can be. And you want to cry, let's cry, we're gonna cry. Like, I remember, I was really out of it, and I remember the nurse was like, you need to go back in your little room. And I was like, no, I need to be with, I don't know her name. I didn't ever catch her name, and we shared this thing, and we were both wearing the like ugly panties they give you. But it was just, again, like another moment that very much stands out in my heart of this experience. Tinder boyfriend drives me home. I'm wearing, a giant diaper pad, and I'm feeling like this relationship is really accelerated. And I'm just like drugged up in his car, and I'm like, well, there we go. But the whole experience, ultimately, what I realized is that as I started sharing my story, which I felt compelled to do, because I was like, hey, guys, did you know that getting an abortion is not the worst, horrible, traumatic, thing that's going to happen to you, that it can be this really positive, empowering, community-building experience? I felt like this urge to talk to people, to my girlfriends, to whoever, and when I would sit down in a room and share my story, all of a sudden, I got like a flood of stories back at me. And I was like, oh, you went through this? It was just like this unbelievable onslaught of honesty and oversharing that was really beautiful and empowering. And I remember, I didn't tell my mom before I went. I tell my mom everything. It's awful. My sister tells me not to do it. It always gets me in trouble, but I do. And I didn't tell her about this, pretty milestone event in my, reproductive life until after the fact. And when I finally did, she was like, oh, honey, I had an abortion. The first man I slept with, I got pregnant. And I'm like, man, this info would have been helpful 20 years ago. But that just goes to show, and that's how deep the taboo and the shame goes, that your own mother won't share. I mean, my mom tells me about, like, how to put a tampon in, and like, yeah, everybody has HPV. Even like Mother Mary has HPV. Everyone has HPV. Like, whatever it is. But like, when it comes to abortion, we are so shamed into silence, and the only way we can take back the narrative is to be honest and to share the spectrum of experience, whatever it may be. And so that's what my hope is for Unplanned Story Parties, that we can have events like this. And it's not the kind of thing that it has to be on a stage. It can be in a living room, invite people in, man, woman, child, whatever it is, and talk honestly about this, because, again, 1 in 3 women we're talking about here. So that's my story, and that's why I am so proud and excited to be here tonight, and why I'm so happy that these other storytellers are going to share theirs as well. So, thank you. And let's talk about